Dragon Ball is a manga which has spawned multiple anime series, anime movies, specials and spin-offs, gaining millions of fans worldwide in the process. Part of the appeal of the series is its wide range of characters, going from characters inspired by the classic Chinese tale of Journey to the West to characters inspired by Hollywood movies and much more. In order to come up with names and visuals for these characters, the author, Toriyama Akira, was just as inventive, finding inspiration in traditional Chinese food to drinks and even underwear. Yeah, I guess we now know who this character was based on. Some of these characters' visuals and names are pretty self-explanatory, while others seem to require a bit of explaining in order to understand their origin and deeper meaning. Join me as we take a stroll through the vast gallery of heroes and villains in Dragon Ball and dive into the mind of its genius creator, Toriyama Akira. In order to be able to understand the character's origin, we first need to understand the origin of the Dragon Ball story itself. Dragon Ball is Toriyama's take on the classical Chinese tale of Journey to the West. The original Chinese tale is called Saiyuki, written with the characters you see here. In Japanese, these same characters are pronounced Saiyuki. Hence, the story is known in Japan under that title. In order to prevent confusion, I will keep using the Japanese name from here on forth. The story of Saiyuki centers on Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. An immortal being born from a spherical-shaped rock, he was eventually accepted as a student by a Taoist sage, earning him the religious name of Sun Wukong, pronounced SonGoku in Japanese, meaning monkey awakened to the void. Void or emptiness in this case refers to the highest state of meditation one can achieve. This concept can be found in various Eastern religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism or Japanese Zen Buddhism. Sun Wukong embarks on various travels and adventures, during which he acquires skills and weapons. Chief among them the ability to walk on clouds, increased speed and strength, and a metal staff that can change its shape, going from the size of a needle to becoming as tall as the sky. This staff is called Rui Jingu Ba in Chinese, or in Japanese, Nyoibo. Eventually, SonGoku rebelled against the heavens and, as punishment, was sealed under a mountain by Buddha himself. The story then shifts focus to the Buddhist monk Sanzo Hoshi, who undertakes a great journey from China to India, following part of the Silk Route, in order to retrieve the sutras. Hence the title Journey to the West, or Saiyuki, which has the same meaning in Chinese or Japanese. In order to have protection during this perilous journey, Sanzo Hoshi receives aid from 3 travel companions, the first being SonGoku, whom he freed from his mountain prison. The 2 of them are eventually joined by the half-man, half-pig Cho Hakai and the water demon Sagojo. Of the 4 travelers, SonGoku is by far the strongest, so much so that he needs to be reeled in by Sanzo Hoshi on a regular basis when he would go overboard during fights. The idea to adapt Saiyuki as a manga did not come to Toriyama immediately, but more through a succession of events. As Dr. Slump was nearing the final chapters, Toriyama stated that he wanted his next manga to feature a male protagonist with a story set in ancient China. The reason for choosing a classic Chinese setting is most likely due to the fact that his wife had a fascination for China and its rich history, which eventually rubbed off on Toriyama himself. The first attempt, Dragon Boy, published in 1983, was the story of Tanton, a young kung fu user from the country of Sen. The story revolved around Tanton setting out on an adventure to bring back the princess of the country Ka, who had deserted her post. At the time, Toriyama was very much into Jackie Chan kung fu movies, which probably served as part of his inspiration for the main character as well as the action sequences. The second attempt, Tompu Daiboken, or Tompu's Great Adventure, was also published in the same year of 1983. This time, the story was visually closer to Dr. Slump, with a talking sun, and the first appearance of what would later be known in Dragon Ball as the Hoi Poi capsules, here called the Iro Iro capsule, literally meaning all kinds of things capsules. The heroine of the story, Puramo, most likely an abbreviation of Pulamodelle, the Japanese word for plastic model kits, shows a close resemblance to Dragon Ball's Bulma, at least as far as her character traits go. This time, the story revolves around a young Earthling cyborg called Tompu, who crash lands on an alien planet after his spaceship called Planet Number 12 explodes. There, he meets up with an Earthling girl, Puramo, as they set out to steal an alien ship so they can return home. The keen observer will notice that various panels in both Dragon Boy and Tompu Daiboken are clear inspirations of what would later become Dragon Ball. The scene where Puramo shoots bullets at Tompu served as a basis for a very similar scene in Dragon Ball where Bulma shot bullets at SonGoku. Puramo's sexy pose is also very resembling Bulma's similar sexy pose at the beginning of Dragon Ball, and all three stories share scenes where the young protagonist, Tanton, Tompu, or SonGoku, blissfully unaware of the anatomy of a girl, is suddenly confronted with the first sight of the naked body of a young girl, leading to some sexy gags, one of the signature signs of Toriyama's early writing. Both stories, Dragon Boy and Tompu Daiboken, show a resemblance to some of Saiyuki's themes, even though this was not necessarily Toriyama's particular intent. When Toriyama submitted both the story of Dragon Boy and Tompu Daiboken to his manager, Torishima-san, the manager reacted with a cold, "These are just like variations on Saiyuki's story." Upon hearing this rather bland reaction, Toriyama decided to literally adapt the story of Saiyuki as is. Indeed, the setting of ancient China is a perfect contrast to the California setting of Dr. Slump, and at the time there were very little to no manga with the Chinese setting. A first draft was made with the four main protagonists closely resembling the four main characters of Saiyuki, in which SonGoku was depicted as an actual monkey. Toriyama wanted the story, as well as the characters themselves, to be very close to the original Saiyuki story. However, the feedback from his wife wasn't all that great, so a second draft was made. In this second draft, we find the SonGoku resembling much closer to the character we know today. No longer an actual monkey, this time he is a young boy who is a skilled kung fu user. His traveling partner, here called Pinchy, is a tech-savvy sassy girl, contrasting with the more traditional and reclusive lifestyle of this SonGoku. Here we can clearly see the story taking shape, as both SonGoku and Pinchy show clear similarities with the final version of SonGoku and Bulma. Finally, Toriyama settled on the look we now all know and love. SonGoku and Bulma's journey began with the first tankobon volume, released on the 10th of September in 1985. It is here that we find the main protagonist of the story, SonGoku. As is abundantly clear by now, his name, appearance and abilities are all inspired by his namesake from Saiyuki, although his appearance is altered from the previous draft to a young boy with a monkey tail. The most telling influences from the original Saiyuki story are of course his tail, referencing back to the original SonGoku being an actual monkey, and his staff, Nyoibo, which can still extend even as far as to the moon. One noticeable difference here is that Nyoibo in Dragon Ball can only extend or shorten, but not change in size as is the case in Saiyuki. Here, the width of Nyoibo remains the same, only the length changes. The staff's name is literally taken from the name of the staff in the Japanese version of Saiyuki. Later on, Dragon Ball's SonGoku eventually acquires Kintoun, a yellow cloud which he can mount and use to travel at great speed through the air. This is a reference to the ability of Saiyuki SonGoku being able to walk on clouds. Illustrations will often see him walk on yellow clouds, showing a close visual resemblance to Dragon Ball's Kintoun. The idea for this name literally came from this ability to walk on clouds. This ability is referenced in the original Chinese story with the following characters. These characters were then rewritten by Toriyama with the closest Japanese variant, leading to a word with the pronunciation Kintoun. The last character of the word literally means cloud in Japanese. Not only physical aspects are inspired by Saiyuki SonGoku, but character traits as well. The fact that he loves fighting, his somewhat playful nature, all of these traits can be traced back to the original SonGoku. Moreover, some perhaps less obvious influences can be discerned by the keen observer. It stands to reason that the quest to retrieve the Dragon Balls is an allegory on Saiyuki's quest to retrieve the sutras from India. The fact that crystal balls are needed in order to summon the dragon Shenron is also not a coincidence. In classic Chinese depictions of a dragon, we can often see the dragon holding a crystal ball in his mouth or claw. This is a symbol for prosperity and career success. Toriyama's fascination with Chinese culture and history probably led him to replace the sutras with crystal balls, allowing the owner to summon Shenron and get the wish granted. Thus, the crystal balls and dragon lead to prosperity. The similarities with Saiyuki do not stop there, however. Further down the line, we learn that SonGoku is actually a Saiyajin who arrived on Earth as a baby in a spherical white ship. This again is not a coincidence, as the spaceship is a reference to how Saiyuki SonGoku was born from a spherical shaped rock. While on the topic, his Saiyan name, Kakaroto, is the Japanese transliteration of the English word carrot. A popular belief among Japanese fans, although never confirmed nor denied by Toriyama himself, is that his name is also a wordplay on Kakazan, which is the Japanese pronunciation of the mountain on which Saiyuki's SonGoku was born. Kakazan is not just a reference in the myth of Saiyuki, but an actual place in China which can be visited. The pronunciation of both carrot and Kakazan are indeed very similar, so it stands to reason that Kakaroto is actually a double wordplay. Delving still further into the myth of Saiyuki, we can even find the origins of SonGoku's most famous transformations, the Ozaru or Big Ape transformation, as well as his Super Saiyajin form. In the story of Saiyuki, at some point during his battle against heaven, SonGoku was put into the Hakkero, or the brazier of 8 tigrams, by Taijo Rokun, the founder of Taoism, believing this would be the only way they could execute the rebellious monkey. However, after 49 days, SonGoku survived and emerged from the brazier, having gained yet another skill, Kagan Kinsei. His eyes had changed into a fiery glowing gold color, allowing him to see through vast distances as well as through any illusion or disguise. The first time SonGoku transforms into Ozaru form is a clear callback to the Saiyuki version. SonGoku, together with Bulma, Oolong, Yamcha and Poalu, are put into a glass roof prison by Pilaf. At daybreak, the sunlight would heat up the room to hell-like temperatures, literally burning our heroes to death. This is a clear wink by Toriyama to the brazier of Taijo Rokun. Eventually, by seeing the full moon, SonGoku transforms into Ozaru form. Aside from changing into a giant ape, his eyes change color into a deep red, which again is a reference to the changing of eye color when the original Songoku emerged from the brazier. The next transformation, Super Saiyajin, is again inspired by this brazier scene as Songoku's eyes change color again, this time into a clear green. But the fiery golden glow is instead used for his aura and hair color. The raised hairstyle also resembles the original Songoku somewhat, as the monkey is often depicted in illustrations with a raised hairstyle. Interestingly enough, the choice for this design and color is not solely due to referencing the original Saiyuki story. There is also a practical element to this choice. In an interview, Toriyama has confirmed that he chose this color as it was much easier and faster to draw in manga style. Indeed, in the manga, he only had to draw the outlines and the hair or eyes didn't need to be colored in. Going back to the first tankobon, the next character we encounter is Bulma. According to interviews by Akira Toriyama, he added her to the story because he needed a sexy character. But since he gave her tomboyish traits, she actually became more popular amongst female fans rather than male fans. He purposely wanted her to contrast with Songoku. Where Songoku led a life away from civilization, Bulma is the opposite. A rich, modern girl, skilled at technology and plenty of world experience. In reference to Saiyuki, she is Toriyama's version of the monk Sanzo Hoshi. Even though Bulma and Sanzo Hoshi share very little in common as far as their visuals and character traits go, her quest to find the Dragon Balls is clearly inspired by Sanzo Hoshi's quest to find the sutras in India. Furthermore, just like Sanzo Hoshi, Bulma will oftentimes educate the playful and somewhat ignorant Son Goku, as well as reel him in when he would go overboard, much in the same way as Sanzo Hoshi does in Saiyuki. Her name is inspired by the Japanese word buruma, which is Japanese for bloomers. Bloomers are actually women's garments dating back all the way to the 1850s. Originally, these were white trousers worn by women. Over the years, they changed shape and eventually were used in Europe as sportswear for gymnastics. It is from there that Japanese have adopted these bloomers, gradually changing them into the underwear-like sports pants, which have become a staple in all Japanese sports school uniforms. Toriyama, looking to give this character a name that doesn't sound too cute, took inspiration from this garment and shortened the last vowel from buruma to buruma. Interestingly enough, as stated by Toriyama in various Japanese interviews, his original idea was to have a romance bloom between Son Goku and Bulma. From the outset, he had planned their relationship as a basis for comedy. Bulma was the first girl a blissfully unaware and naive Son Goku had ever met, and this would often lead to hilarious and somewhat sexually tinted comedic moments. Gradually, their relationship would evolve from friendship to an actual romantic one. As the story progressed, Toriyama let go of that idea, deeming it detrimental to the overall flow of the story, and as such, Yamcha was introduced as a surrogate love interest for Bulma. With this information, we can see how each little piece of the Dragon Ball puzzle was created and fit into the whole, creating a beautiful mixture of cultural and historical references, wordplays, names, places, objects, and techniques inspired by other mythologies. Add to this Toriyama's sense of humor and storytelling, and all these elements came together to create Dragon Ball. A modern mythology that will most likely stand the test of time, allowing it to exist side by side next to the stories that inspired it. By learning about these references and origins, we can look at Dragon Ball through a different lens and perhaps enjoy the story all over again. And yet, we've only started to scratch the surface, as there is so much more to dissect and analyze. But that's a story for another video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next chapter of Dragon Ball's origins. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, ring the notification bell, comment and share this video. It really helps the channel.